Where are the winged stork-like devices with two fires taking the flying container with an evil fire encased in lead, which will destroy entire buildings, incinerating both wood and stone, and leaving behind a deadly residue? And he said to me, to build it, a house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own base. Now I'm going to take you on this journey, because this is a provision for you, if you have ears to hear, which narrows the field substantially. Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1. Then I turned, lifted up my eyes, and looked, and behold, a flying roll. When I saw the word roll in English, I assumed, and it was correctly, that it was a megillah. What is a megillah? Well, this is the megillah of Esther. He looked up and saw a flying roll. It's not a jelly-filled Bismarck. It's not a carpet roll. It's not a sushi roll. It is a flying megillah. He sees it flying in the sky. And the angel said to me, what do you see? And he said, I see a flying megillah. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and at 20.62 inches to the divine cubit, and that is how all of the measurements are done in the Bible, is the cubit and a handbreadth of Ezekiel. But Solomon, who built the gates of Hazor, Gezer, and Megiddo, which are still intact today, excavated down, they still measure exactly in the divine cubit of 20.62 inches. The Ark of the Covenant, all of the table of showbread, all the implements of the temple are all measured in the 20.62 divine cubit, also called the Royal Egyptian cubit as well, but it's the divine cubit. And at 20.62 inches, he looks up and sees something that is 34.5 feet long. And the breadth thereof is 10 cubits. Now, breadth in the Hebrew manuscripts is a line cast about, such as the Temple of Solomon. There were two pillars out front and a line cast about of 12 cubits. Well, 12 cubits, a line cast about, if you were then to move it into Greek measurement system of diameter, dia, through meter, through measurement, it would be times 3.14 of the line cast about. So in Solomon's temple, those pillars were about 6.5 feet in diameter. This here is 10 cubits. A line cast about, which is 5.5 feet in diameter. And so he looks up into the sky and sees something that looks like a flying megillah, but obviously it's not the scroll of Esther because it's 34.5 feet long. It is 5.5 feet in diameter. And then the angel said to me in verse 3, this is the curse that goes forth over the face of the whole earth. The whole earth. And when I say the word earth, I know that in Hebrew it would be eretz. So it could be just the land of Israel. It could be the entire globe. Only the context is what determines what it's going to be. For everyone that steals shall be cut off on this side according to it. And we see in the context, steals my words one from another. And everyone that sweareth. And it's again speaking further in the context, swears falsely by my name is going to be cut off on that side. Like this side, like that side, everyone that steals my words one from another and bears false witness or swears falsely in my name, saying the Lord said this, and he didn't say it, they're going to be killed by this. So I'm very cautious when I say the Lord gave me revelation that I am to deliver to you. I will bring it forth, verse 4, saith YeHoVaH Tzebaoth, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that swears falsely by my name. And it shall remain in the midst of the house, and shall consume it with the timber thereof and the stones thereof. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said unto me, now lift up your eyes and see what it is that goes forth, what it is that goes forth, that flies. Now I'm going to explain this to you. I am going to show you what this is. And I said, what is it? And he said, this is an ephah that flies, goes forth. This is an ephah that flies. Now, an ephah is literally a measurement. And it's usually measured with a basket, or it is measured with a ceramic vase, so that you get an exact measurement. And so when it says this is an ephah, we know the dimensions of it. It's not an ephah that's literally about 40 liters. That is what an ephah really is, about 40 liters. But this is a container. Now, I relate this biblically, as well as my upbringing. I was raised for a few years on an apple orchard. I worked on apple orchards. My father ran Pearson's Welcome Orchards at the corner of 44 and 66 in Michigan. And so I know what a bushel is. A bushel contains 4 pecks. A bushel of apples is 4 pecks. But yet, when we see that Yeshua says, and it's in King James, no one takes a candle and hides it under a bushel. He's not talking about 4 pecks of apples. He's talking about a container. The size of the container is irrelevant. It's just talking about he doesn't hide it under a container. Here, it's an ephah used not as 40-liter measurement, but as a container. It's a container that flies, 34.5 feet long, 5.5 feet in diameter. And he said, moreover, this is the resemblance throughout the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead. And in Hebrew, it's literally a measurement, a talent of lead. That's what it says. Lead was something that was known in those days. It says the same thing in the Septuagint in Greek, talentov milibu. And it says, it's lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a fire that sits or is positioned in the midst of this flying ephah. So he sees an evil fire offering encased in lead inside a flying container, 34.5 feet long, 5.5 feet in diameter. This is an asha. It's a fire offering. And he said this is wickedness. What is this? That's why we diagram sentences. That's why we need to know to whom and where the relative pronouns relate. This evil fire, this is wickedness. This fire is evil. This is an evil fire in a flying container that is encased in a sphere around a kikar, as it says in Hebrew, of lead. And he cast it, the fire, into the midst of the flying container, and he put the weight of lead upon the mouth, the opening thereof. Then I lifted up my eyes. Okay, and so now you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the exact dimensions of a Scud missile. 34.5 feet long, 5.5 feet in diameter. It has an evil fire offering in it. And what is it going to do? It is going to incinerate entire buildings, including the wood and the stone, and as it says, it's going to remain in the house. There is a deadly residue. It's going to kill people. I am going to bring this forth, saith YeHoVaH Sebaot. So I'm very familiar with this because as we were sitting in San Onofre, the group of Marines waiting to go to Vietnam, we waited for 2 weeks. Something was happening. Finally, Nixon called the commandant and said no more Marines are being transferred into Vietnam. We are now beginning the pullout and no more Marines are being transferred in. So I received orders to the U.S. Naval Base, Cecil Field, Florida, and now I can speak about these things because it has been completely shut down. The main thoroughfare has been renamed New World Way, And my job was to guard nuclear warheads. Because of 3 meritorious promotions, I was put in charge of a convoy as a lance corporal, and then as a corporal. And our job was to move nuclear warheads from where we were guarding them, put it on a truck, and we were fully loaded, ready for action, and we took it over and loaded it on a plane. Well, we took it over to the Navy. They loaded it on a plane, and after the plane left the tarmac, then we get back in our convoy and then go back over to the nuclear warhead field, which the Marines were responsible for guarding. And so I know what these things are all about. We had smaller ones that were loaded on the planes, but they were cylindrical containers with an evil fire offering encased in lead. The lead kept the stray radiation from hurting anyone around them. And these were loaded up onto these birds that F-16s, etc., that have the 2 fires that to come out of them, lifting them off and taking them to wherever they are going to be set up and ready for action. So now we're going to continue on with this description. Perhaps those who have not had that experience would not have seen what I see here, but then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there came out 2 women, 2 fires. It is literally the feminine plural of fires, and the wind was in their wings. For they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Now, living in the Great Rift Valley, as I do in Israel, the Sea of Galilee is part of the Great Rift Valley, we see the migration of the storks. They don't flap their wings and fly, they soar in circles. And they hold their wings out straight, and they just soar and soar and soar in circles. And so he's seeing what appears to be, it looks like stork. It looks like a stork, but yet it has 2 fires. And they lift up these flying containers with evil fire offerings encased in lead. And what are they doing with them? They lifted up the ephah between the earth and heaven. And then I said to the angel that spoke with me, where are they taking the ephah? Then the angel asked me, where are the winged stork-like devices with 2 fires taking the flying container with an evil fire encased in lead, which will destroy entire buildings, incinerating both wood and stone, and leaving behind a deadly residue? And he said to me, to build it, a house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own base. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, the land of Shinar, modern-day Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Right now, the Russians are in Syria, and they have just boasted, just this last month, that they have a warhead in a Scud missile that will decimate an area the size of the state of Texas. They are in Syria. We know there are more than 60,000 missiles aimed at us out of Syria right now. These are not rockets, the little putter bombs that they send out of Lebanon by the Hezbollah. These are serious warheads. Over 60,000 of them, and now Russia says they have the warheads, nuclear warheads, that will level the state of Texas. That is what is sitting in Syria. That is what's positioned in Israel. The base for it has been set up. They have taken it there, and it is ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the future looks like. This is what is going to be transpiring. Zechariah was taken ahead in time by the angel and told what is going to come against the land of Israel. This is what is spoken of in Joel as the very devices that are going to be used that will cause the atmosphere to be darkened. The sun will be darkened, the moon will be turned to blood, the stars will darken. Because this is Zechariah's thermonuclear war. This is Joel's army that before them is like the Garden of Eden. And as you're in the Dead Sea Valley, you see mile after mile of the greenhouses and feeding not only the entire land of Israel, but Europe and Japan, and even imported to the United States. These things, it is like the Garden of Eden, but behind them, it is a smoldering, desolate wasteland. In this army, the Almighty is going to have a task. 4,000 years ago, the Creator of the heavens and the earth made an everlasting covenant with Abraham. All the land from the Euphrates to the Nile belongs to the sons of Israel. Shockwaves will shake the earth as heaven reaches down to fulfill that promise. And everyone that stands against that covenant will find themselves on the battlefield against the Almighty. I said, Lord, when is this going to be? Keep reading. Because there are no chapters and verses, nor vowels in Zechariah. Zechariah 6:1, keep reading. And I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there came out 4 chariots, which are war machines, Merkavim, which is what Israel calls their tanks. That's the word. Tanks are Merkavim. 4 war chariots came out from between 2 mountains. And these mountains were not natural geological formations. These were mountains of brass, which is a man-made alloy. Genesis, Tubal-Cain, was an instructor of every artificer of brass and iron. Brass is a man-made alloy. These are 2 man-made mountains, and between them, out from them, from the implosion of these 2 man-made mountains, came forth the war chariots that started World War III. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in it right now. You need to wake up, because we were told by the prophets, and if you ignore the prophets and what's about to take place, you can try to bury your head and try to moan that your person didn't get elected president or have glorious hopes that your candidate did. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to matter. If you think the first American Muslim president, the one who bowed to Muslim potentates, you think that he's going to leave office and everything's going to be quiet unless he goes directly to the United Nations as head to continue on his mission of turning every ally of America into Muslim Brotherhood and every friendly nation to Israel into Muslim Brotherhood. That was his mission. That's what's been accomplished. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about to go down before you.
Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon, and I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new MichaelRood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.